Well, everybody, and welcome to Walton's World here on Softball America. I am super excited to join me today, Coach Carol Hutchins, Coach Hutch, or just Hutch to all her friends, players, former teammates. How excited I am to have you on here with me today, Coach Hutch. And I don't really ever call you Hutch. I say that because I mean this like with all sincerity that the people that I really, really, really respect, it's usually Coach. And I think I've always called you Coach. But today, for everybody else, the whole world knows you as Hutch. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, I'm happy to be here. I'm looking forward to connecting with you. I always enjoy connecting with you, and you can call me anything you want because I've called you a lot of names over the years.
You went right there, right away, like literally.
Set it up.
Literally, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. So I actually I'm kind of stooped down in my chair a little bit because I wanted to surprise you. So we seem to be using a phrase today in all of social media and a bunch of stuff. It's GOAT. And my kids will tell me, Dad, you're goated. Like they just say all these things, and it's so funny. So we got all these phrases, and my friends at Be Your Own Goat and Deuce Brand, we got a T-shirt brand that says "Be Your Own Goat."
Oh, that's cool.
And I thought it was super appropriate for the GOAT, the greatest of all time, which is Hutch. You are the winningest coach in softball history, and Division I coach. But and I mean this, like the number of awards that are going to be named after you. Far after you and I are gone from this world because of what the impact you've had on so many administrators, players, coaches, the game of softball. But so anyway, I wore my Be Your Own Goat because this, to me, in my mind, from every person I've ever interacted with, Carol Hutchins is her own goat. She does her own thing, her own way, and it's always for the betterment of the people around her. So thanks for joining us. It's awesome. What are you up to these days?
Well, it's life in everybody's like, how's retirement? And I said, well, my life is good. I mean, I didn't retire from life. I've kind of redirected and changed my passions and what I do every day. And I'll be the first to tell you, when softball season rolls in, this is the second year. This year's a little harder than the first year. The first year I was still on the whirlwind tour. I mean, of the celebration of retiring and all the things that came with that. And now I'm settling in and you miss it. I was down at practice last week. The weather in Michigan's been unusually wonderful, and we're on the field. It's like 60 degrees. And Bonnie said, hey, can you toss me balls so she can hit fungos? And I mean, I'm just like, oh, I missed it. I was missing it a lot. And I miss the people. I was recruiting. I have to say I was never known for my love of running around at these shitty ballparks, but I do miss walking up to every field and seeing somebody I know and shooting the shit with them. I mean, I miss that a lot. I miss my colleagues. And what do? I do whatever I want. I'm still employed in the athletic department. Technically, I'm the special advisor to the athletic director. What I do more than anything is I work with our program administrators, the administrators who are in charge of softball, baseball, water polo, golf, and I sit in their meetings, and I'm the coach in the room, and I'm literally the only one in the room who has any coaching experience of significance. We have a couple people who coached a little bit, and I can tell you that I present the viewpoint as I see a coach would want to see done. Because how can you serve? I mean, I believe the tier is that they serve us so that we can serve the student athletes. And right now in today's world, the administrations of college, they're up there on I call it the second floor, and we're all in the basement, and they go straight to the student athletes. Like, hello there, you're missing out on on us. And so I've been able to at least impact their thought process. I can tell you some days it's like running on a treadmill. In fact, most days, leadership in our sport is there's a plethora of great leaders out there. There's so many great coaches who, leaders get shit done. And you know what? You went to Florida, you're going to build a national level program and you got your shit done. And honestly, at that level, I'm finding that we need more leadership and getting things done. So I like to be an advocate for the coaches. And I also work with our coaches. They call me up, hey, are you busy? I got to run something by you. And, I'm kind of an advisor around the department. I show up for special functions. I'll talk to recruits, and I play golf a lot. I travel. Sometimes I walk around my house, do circles and walk the dog. Think, what am I doing? So I'm still settling in for sure.
I love it. But it's funny too, because your personality, and again, I've just grown to appreciate it. I was a history major in college. So being a history major doesn't necessarily mean you know everything about the world, but it just means you retain important information and facts. And I've always retained things about the game of softball. I really tried to learn about the best. And I did 2 podcasts before, one with Mike Candrea, one with Sue Enquist.
Wow.
And
those are the goats right there.
And I'm telling you, with the 3 of you, the greatest of all time in our sport, and they referenced you, and both of them referenced you, and Sue referenced you of, and hers was really out of competition. Like, I want to compete. I want the best. I want this. And she said, and then, Michigan comes around and, they whoop us, and they beat us and won their first national championship. And she talked about that relationship and everything that she loved about the relationship, love for what you did for the sport, being able to take it from a small pocket of a couple states and branched out to getting it, past the Mississippi and, their first national championship in 2005. And I've been one of those that really just takes in some of the greatest moments of our sport and some of the greatest sports figures. I want to go backwards in time just a little bit and talk a little bit. I went through, we went to Tuscaloosa this past weekend, and I went through and just, I like to read about people. So I read your Wikipedia page. I read some articles. I did a little recon, but I'm going to save the recon for the end with one of your former coaches. But I went through and this is, I'm going to read a little bit of your bio. And I say this, and I know, again, I'm not even going to put myself on your level, but I'm going to say it this way. When you read stuff about yourself and you hear stuff about yourself, it kind of gives you like nails on the chalkboard kind of a feeling, especially when people are wrong, when they get it wrong. Like, wait a minute, I won 2 national championships. I didn't win one. I was this. So, but going through, when you retired in 2022, you retired with 39 years of softball head coaching experience. And I'm looking at the numbers here, and you tell me if this is 1,707 wins.
That's what I've read. I didn't have a little abacus and a little clicker and count them, but that's what I've read too.
1,707 wins. And again, I heard you loud and clear, and I'm the same way. The losses are what stick out to you. Most of the time, it's not all the wins. Those are the parts of the game that, you just kind of turn the page and move on. But the winningest coach in any sport, male or female, in Michigan athletics history, and the story, Michigan, the number of sports Michigan has, 12 College World Series appearances. And I would imagine, especially in the 80s and the 90s, the number of times you got outside before you played your first regional game when practice was probably pretty small. I'm guessing.
Well, that doesn't change a whole lot. We can go on the road for 20 preseason games, come to play in Florida and all the places we go, and still not get out. This year it's been an exceptional preseason, but yeah, that's but you just figure out a way to get it done, right?
So I found the award that's going to be named after you. I already know it. I mean, this is an easy thing to do. I'm already making I'm making the pitch for the Big Ten. You won a national championship in 2005, which was, if I'm not mistaken, Sam Finley pulled back, hit a home run. Jenny Ritter was the winning pitcher. Just a phenomenal dog pile and celebration. 22 Big Ten championships and 18. It's 18. The Carol Hutchins Big Ten Coach of the Year Award, because that's really what it should be called. I already found it. There it is. But the thing that I love the most is that I was talking to Coach Enquist, talking to Coach Candrea, and a lot of this, the fact that the Big Ten voted you the Coach of the Year 18 times, in my opinion, tells everybody what they need to know about you. And that is that, yeah, your teams were great, but your colleagues, your competitors, the amount of respect that they have for the way you run your program, the way you coach third base, the way you wrote your lineup, the way you won, the way you lost, a gracious winner, a gracious loser. I mean, a fiery competitor. I wouldn't even, some people are like Chihuahuas. You're like a Doberman pincher, a big, you're just going to get after me in the game. And you're going to tell me too, if something's going to happen in the game. I love that about you. This one here was your two-time NFCA National Coaching Staff of the Year. And in 2016, ESPNW did the inaugural Pat Summitt Coaching Award. And I thought that was I'm assuming that was a special award to you. Very when I read about the award, and I everything it said about that embodied you. Coach Summitt was just ahead of her time. You were and still are ahead of your time, and how you treated your athletes, how you trained them, how you demanded of them and their coaches. And then if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about after you win a national championship. For me, I was like done. It was like, oh my gosh. You decided that you weren't done with the game. You're going to go ahead and jump into Team USA for 2005 summer. Tell me about that. The way to spend your victory tour as a retiree is obviously a lot different than the 2005 summer.
Well, that, it was a whirlwind, and I had already, out of the blue one day that this stuff comes across, would you like to apply to be in this pool? And I had not really ever considered it. We don't get much time in the summer. I never thought I'd want to give up my time, and thought, I had a wild hair, and I applied, and I get an email like maybe in March or so, and you've been selected, and you're going to be the head coach of the women's the elite team, but not the national team. And of course, Mike was, and I'm like, I don't want to be the head coach. I wanted to go be somebody's assistant and learn from them. And I'm like, I don't want to be the head coach. But off I went and got to go to training camp in San Diego. It was so fun. All we did was play softball all day. Like, you'd have morning session, like 2-a-days, all day morning, all evening, and all these great athletes. And 4 of my kids were selected to go, and they all made the B team. And so we went traveling around the world with them, and met all these people. Like Lauren Lappin was on the team, and, just all these kids that we played against. And, it was really fun. And all we did was softball. You didn't have to recruit. You just go out there, and everybody wanted more fungals and more batting practice. And I did get to go on the national team tour. They went to Japan. So I was Mike's assistant on that tour. And, that was, a whole different level of, it was the Stacy Newman, Jenny Finch, Mendoza. They were all on that team. And,
yeah.
And I knew them. I had recruited Stacy Newman and knew her dad well. And I sat on the plane. I said, I got to tell you, and I'm not like into the Brene Brown vulnerability, but I said, I'm like, I know we just won a championship, but I really feel like, I don't know if I can coach this kind of athlete. Like, you guys are so good. And I felt really inadequate. She goes, Hutch, we're just like everybody else. We just need some confidence and somebody to believe in us. And I was like, oh, well, I can do that. And I just had a great time with it. It was really fun. But yeah, I left town, came back in, and I'll tell you this story. I walked into my office, and my poor staff is home doing all the work.
All the recruiting you said you weren't doing.
We had a White House tour scheduled. We were up playing in the Canada Cup with the team, and we flew back. I flew back, literally went straight to the Detroit airport, and then we flew off to the White House. So they had to plan that trip, which is, I hope that you got to go to the White House. It is quite a trip with your team,
We didn't in 2014 or 15, but in 2000 as an assistant, we did make the visit. So I got to the White. I understand what you're talking about, the bus tours and all the security and the detail of that. Oh yeah.
So, but I come home and my office, I walked into it and I looked around. I said, did I die? There was so much stuff in there. Like people from all over the country, colleagues, friends had sent me. I mean, Melinda Fisher from Illinois State sent me a case of beer with the picture of us. It was like this, like special made, and it had all of our pictures on it, Michigan National Championship logo. And I had Sherry Kemp sent me. Bonnie goes, you got to open that box. And as I open it, I shriek. There is a humongous stuffed Wolverine in the box. Still to this day, up in the office, it sits above my old desk on the credenza. It's amazing. I mean, that thing is, she goes, yeah, my grandfather was a taxidermist. He was throwing it out. And I said, I know what to do with that. And, but the outpouring of support, people were very excited for that moment. And, I teased Enquist. She could not have been a more gracious, just colleague during that whole time. And, I said everybody in the country was rooting for us. You only had your UCLA people. That's it. Everybody wanted Michigan to win. And, we hung on and found a way to win it. But she was fantastic. And
well, the one thing so that 2005 was my first year as a head coach going to postseason. As my first, I was my third year coaching. The next year I was the Florida coach. Here. But the one thing that because the way you said that about UCLA, and you said the only people that were rooting for UCLA were the UCLA people. Well, the two things that I found really intriguing about Michigan and UCLA, when you play at the World Series, whether you're playing Florida or you're playing somebody else, the number of people, the number of fans, the number of retired fans, current fans, students, but the one thing that stands out the most in the first three rows are your alums. All of the players that have played for you, maybe even some that have played with you, they all come back. And UCLA does the same thing. I was so, I'll be honest with you, a little bit jealous. We're playing you in 2015. And I look up and there's Jenny Ritter. I think Jenny Ritter might even been my bat rep at the time. And she's up there in the stands and she's got her Go Blue shirt on. But the jealousy is that if I were to do a program and build a program that sustains success, that would be the best, the most flattering thing that anyone could do is come back and support the current kids. Because we all know the current kids have it way better than the older kids had it. And is that something that do you get excited when you look up there from the third base coaching box and see all your former players sitting up there? They're not sitting, they're standing leading the cheers.
Well, first of all, anybody who's knows anything about me and my program here, the alums are my why. All those kids who came through this program, and think about the continuity of the staff here. I mean, Bonnie, Jen, and Jen came in 99. She's the newbie. And we've been here. I've been here since 85. Bonnie came back in 94 and had played here, of course. And Jen came from UCLA in 99. And I mean, these kids, there's so many generations of kids that had played for us, the coaches. And, in Michigan, the traditions of this university are really steep. But our program, and to me, it is the number one reason our culture is so strong over the years, is we have sustained the relationships from the time you walk in the door, we've recruited you to, I'm a freaking great grandmother these days. And we have recruited kids now that are the daughters of the kids we coached, which I knew. I got to get my hair colored, but it's the most important thing. And when we had a big reunion this fall, we typically have one about every 5 years. I don't want to have one every year. I want them to all come back at the same time. And I have that for me. That is so fun. And they dedicated the stadium this year. We worked it all around the alums coming back. And I'm going to tell you what, we had about 150 people. Oh. And that was the highlight. It's the highlight of my career, is being around all those kids and former players who we're just family. They're all but a few of my former athletes are in my cell phone, and we stay in close touch. Everywhere we go, Bonnie took the team out to Santa Barbara. She had a handful of alums show up. And then when we come to Fullerton, all of our LA kids, they come back. They love their experience. And I stayed in coaching. I never left college. I'm still in college. I never left because why would you? It's the greatest experience of your life. And I always tell people my goal is to make sure you have one of the greatest experiences of your life, which doesn't mean it's going to always be fun and rosy. Right.
Well, you referenced Jen Brundage, and so she's my recon. So I did a little homework. Jen and I have become friends. To be honest with you, I was telling her a story. The first time I met her, we were in Tustin recruiting together in the old days of recruiting. I didn't know this at the time, but it was my first recruiting tournament ever, and it was one of her first recruiting tournaments ever. Okay. We're out in Tustin. We're recruiting out at I think it was Tustin Ranch or Tustin Park. We're out recruiting. There's like 16 games going on at one time. It's the old like soccer type field. It wasn't like the stadiums and stuff that they have at like Barber or anything like that. But long story short, she and I are out there recruiting. And but I did a little recon, and you referenced your time not feeling the quote unquote necessarily the worthiness of being the women's national team coach in 2005. And Jen Brundage gave you a tremendous amount of credit. She said she came onto your staff, and she's coaching with you. She's also training. At that point in time, she was an alternate. She was trying to make the 2000 Olympics in Sydney. She was trying to make that squad. Long story short, she said that one day you told her she's whatever she said. She goes, the problem, Jen, is that you guys take the game too serious. It's too serious. And she's like, and she said at first point, she's like, she took a little offense to it. She said, what do you mean it's too serious? Like, this is everything. And she said, not necessarily at that moment, but as that resonated with her and her training and how she went about her business, every single time she trained or every single time she went to try to make the team in Chula Vista, under the microscope of USA, ASA softball, she said she was uptight. She couldn't perform. She couldn't get hit. She couldn't play at the level that she trained at. And she said, being on your staff and being in the dugout and listening to you and actually listening to you, she said she felt like besides her, obviously she had God-given talent. It was the separator. It was the breaking point of what, and then she goes on and wins a gold in 2000 and makes the team. And she credits you with the mentality shift of helping her make that. And I thought I know Jen's been on your staff for a million years, and she's a great friend and colleague and a great pitching coach. But I thought you should hear that about her. I thought that was a really cool story.
It's been fun to watch her evolve. And yeah, she came to me and I was like, wow, she's a little tight around the anus, I like to say. And I tell my kids that every now and then and I did tell her that. And then in Sydney, they struggled. Remember, they were about to get knocked out of the tournament without any medal. And she called me from Australia, of course, that time change. And I'm like, it's got to be fun. Like I had so much fun every day. And I always had more fun than anybody because I love to make fun of people. I love to have a sense of humor. I like to find the irony in every situation and use analogies for things. And I'm pretty serious and intense. It's not like I don't think when you walk in this building, you better be about Michigan and you better be about winning. But you've got to find that balance of enjoying what you do. And as I've studied now, I do a lot of speaking engagements, and I can walk in the room and tell everybody what to do and then go practice my putting. And, you've got to find a way to balance your life. And it needed to be more fun. And, and I'm like the president of the Sarcasm Society, and Enquist is the vice president, by the way. I anointed her during our national championship series. You get to be the vice president. And you got to have fun with it. And Jen really learned to do that. And it's funny. I listened to her describe one of our new young kids who's really good. And I was talking about how she doing. She goes, she just doesn't have any fun. I'm like, yeah, I can see that. She just wants to be good. But it's okay to want to be good. You should. But how can you, you're imperfect. And we need to learn, kids can do better at being imperfect because nobody's perfect. And I'll be the first to tell them that, I was the queen of being imperfect. I'm the most imperfect person, and I used to laugh at it. Like, yeah, I forgot to do that. Whoops, I forgot to give the signal. No wonder we didn't do it. And I just think people need to step back a little bit because you can't handle a constant 24/7 of intensity. You got to take a break. You got to smile and laugh at yourself sometimes.
But she's the other story she told, and I'm going to come back to the other story. I think this is a better phrase or segue. If you could give, let's just say we're trying to make the national team, or we're trying to make my high school team for the first time, or I'm trying to be a starter as opposed to a non-starter on a team that has aspirations to get the College World Series. Is there a piece of advice that you would give those? Let's just say it's a struggling kid who has tons of potential. Any advice you give them and how they can perform it maybe at a higher level?
Well, I speak on this and I talk a lot about embracing the role you have. I mean, first of all, success, everyone wants to be successful. You raise your hand in the room. Who in this room doesn't want to be successful? Who's going to raise their hand? Everybody wants to be successful. But I've learned over my many years, and as I'm watching our team and some of the advice I give our coaching staff, you have to embrace that failure is part of success. Success is further down the road, and you go through failure, whether you lose games, you have setbacks, you didn't make the team as a freshman, but you keep persevering. And when you finally get that, or you didn't win a game, we didn't win but 2 games in our first 7 World Series appearances. We'd been there 7 times. We had only won 2. We were 2-14, and that's all ESPN talked about. And you know what? We got sick of it. We're like, we're here now and we're winning, and we won the whole thing. And I said, so there. But I tell people you got to embrace the role you have. And I use the example of a pinch runner. Kids come in the program, they're talented, they're fast, and their first role is to be a pinch runner, right? They're not ready to play full time. They still haven't learned the game yet. And I had a kid who was in that role, probably my best athlete, but she wasn't ready to play. And she was out more than she was safe. So I call her in. I said, you're a terrible pinch runner. You need to embrace your role. Oh, I embrace my role. I said, you're out more than you're safe. You slow down to slide. You don't take the base. You don't always know the count. You don't always read the ball off the bat. You don't know how many outs. You can be way better at this role. We need you to be. When I put you in the game, you're the most important person we have. Well, Hutch, I want to be a starter. I said, well, of course you do. But this is the life lesson. Who is going to take you? If you're not good at the role you have, like you have to be the shining star. You're in the basement. You just started at an entry-level position in your company, and everybody wants to be the CEO, go upstairs and make 6 figures. You got to be the shining star. Nobody's going to say, well, they're not very good at that job. Let's move them up to a better job and see how they do there. That's the life lesson. Next year, the kids started was all Big Ten. Like, be really good at what you're doing. Be in your shoes now. And, whether it's not always going to go the way you want, but I've had a lot of kids who started as bench players, role players, worked their way into Kelsey Susala, our number 4 hitter on that 2015 team. She was our 4 hitter. She hit bombs. Her first 2 years, she was a pinch hitter and hit ground balls. And I kept plugging away, and she'd come in. I go, where's your lunchbox? You want to go to work? She'd come in and hit every day. She didn't get a bad attitude. She didn't blame me. She probably did sometimes. But in general, the kid just kept working. She just kept plugging away. She was outstanding for us. Those are the success stories. That's what we are doing in athletics. That's what we're doing. But now, and it's getting harder. Keep the parents on board with that. Keep the kids on board with that, right?
Well, I think a lot of times too, and again, I'm a parent. So being a parent of 3 kids and 2 of my kids, well, my daughter actually competed. Most of them had more level awards than my sons did. They just specialized a little bit more. But being a parent is pretty hard because your expectations of your kid is a reflection of you at times. And I always empathize with our kids. I tell them, like, listen, I want to try to create the best role possible for you. And I'm going to my door's always open. We can talk about how you can get better at your roles, but I'm going to use my own experience and say, okay, my son, he was a freshman baseball player. Sophomore year, he gets moved up to varsity. He catches, he hits. They play him a couple times. He goes back down to JV, pitches on JV, comes back up to varsity, plays catcher, does some stuff. Well, he was just a role player. And I was like, hey, he's getting to play. Who cares? Next year, he's a junior, doesn't pitch very much. We have we had a kid who's going to go 26th in the draft and, some other stuff. So he's just wasn't that kid. The next year, he was the player of the year in our area as a first-time, full-time, starter as a pitcher, and goes to a JC, walks on at the JC, earns a scholarship, and then finally gets a scholarship to play Division I baseball. And I use that story all the time because everybody progresses at different rates. Even though we as parents think, man, my kid's really good, at the end of the day, I just want my kid to not have an opportunity to play. It doesn't matter where they play. I want them to be happy. And if they're in an environment where there is truly player development, people development, academic development going on, then how can you not be happy knowing that your kid's going to be fully developed when they graduate college? They may not be all American or all SEC or all Big Ten, but at the end of the day, if they're getting a great experience and a great opportunity, I've just started to be, in the past 5 years, I've been more empathetic to the players because I understand the pressures that parents are putting on you because I'm a parent and I'm doing the same thing, but I also have to know that I hope that I want my kids to develop at their own rate and be happy. And I think that's a key. I'm sure you've had a lot of experience navigating that path. The kids understand it, but parents maybe sometimes they just don't quite understand why their kid doesn't have a better role.
Well, I think that in today's world, I prided myself for years. I'd write a parent letter. Dear parent, this is what to expect from our season. These are the rules. These are what, the kids are on a business trip and you're on vacation. And I'd basically say, I want to write to them, dear parent, leave your kid in Ann Arbor or take her home with you, but don't stay here and get in the way. And so Bruggeman was my assistant coach at the time. She's like, we need a little, well, I'll pretty this up a little bit for you. I said, that'd be great. And she did. But nowadays you really have to work the parents as well. You have to really spend more time with that. But we've lost kids in the portal who just played out. They weren't ready to play yet. And then they go to another school and they play more. I said, well, you were on your way. You were probably going to play here by next year. We're not a patient society. And I do think parents create more stress. The kids who have issues, whether it's mental health or just the pressures they feel, I think the parents need to sit back and watch them have their experiences and give them the advice of all the things you control are being a good teammate, being a good team member, and doing what you do really well and working to improve. And you've got to learn to measure what success really looks like, because everybody wants to be the star. Everybody wants to be Sarah Romero. That is just not a normal path. That's extraordinary. And everybody loves to have extraordinary. But in fact, the regular person has to put one foot in front of each other every day. And I think the more we can educate parents with that and what it really looks like, because when they go to college, it's really hard. It's really hard. And I used to tell kids that they sit in my chair and say, this is what Michigan does. This is what Michigan is about, but it is hard. Every aspect of this university is hard. They make it hard for you to be great in school because they like to knock you down and say, watch you get up. And when you get up, that's when you become an empowered person. When you fail and then you come back and conquer it, that's empowerment. Empowerment is not something I can just give you. Here's empowerment. Just take that pill. We empower you by pushing you beyond your edge, and then you learn how to navigate that.
Yeah, I actually don't think that everybody wants to be great. I think that they think they want to be great, but then they recognize just how hard it is to, you referenced Sierra Romero, how hard it is to be the center focus of everybody's scouting report. Everybody on the other teams know every one of your weaknesses, which I never found a Sierra Romero batting weakness. I think the weakness that everybody said was, her throwing arm. She doesn't throw with a cannon. Well, okay, she doesn't need to throw with a cannon because she hits with a cannon. And she can throw the ball to first base, and she can do it. Like those are all the knockdowns of kids. But one of the best college, especially right-handed, one of the best right-handed hitters of all time. Yes. I don't think that everybody wants to be great, and I I think they think they do, but the amount of pressures, the amount of work that goes into that, the amount of pressure the head coach puts on his best or her best players is tremendous. And what I mean, you know that. I mean, you're putting all of you're coaching them up on how to be a better teammate. You're coaching them up on how to deal with, hey, not everybody's as talented as you are. You're going to have to be a better teammate. You're going to have to demand success, but you have to learn how to communicate with a little bit of empathy, and you have to understand how to be a great teammate, not just a great softball player. And I don't think everybody wants that.
Well, people, they say what they want, but again, when they get in the grind of what it takes. Well, you said you wanted to be great. This is what it takes. This is the grind. But let me tell you, it's a conversation I had with Sarah Romero one time. And, she was a great kid. She was a wonderful teammate. And she didn't complain about people. She was always very thoughtful and kind. And if she did something wrong, I mean, I had to reprimand her once for breaking curfew, and she went right onto the team bus and apologized to the whole team. And she's a great kid. But she came in and we were just chatting, and she says, she was mad. Like, our team wasn't playing as well at that moment. And she said, everybody just thinks I'm a superstar. What's the word? Like superhuman. Like, oh yeah, but you're Sierra Romero. Like, of course, you can do all this. She goes, they can do what I do. They just need a mindset. They just need to have the same mindset I have. And talent may prevail, and she was so right. Like, people will cop out and say, well, they're really good. They put them on a pedestal and don't realize that maybe what they do to get to that. And a lot of it just starts with your approach, your attack mode, your mindset. And creating a mindset is what I think we try to do as we get ready for every day of practice, and how we mold these kids. What's your mindset? Because you can control that. And boy, they kind of leave it up to everybody else.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to Jen Brundage, and she said, and she was, again, she's obviously came from UCLA, was a great high school prep player, great college player, learned how to be a great pitching coach.
Did.
She's a great pitch caller. The thing that she said that stood out the most, that I think you would appreciate too, was you sit on a bucket next to her every game. You sit on a bucket, and you're calling pitches, and you're talking about this hitter, or you're talking about the pitches called, and you're talking about this, and she said that you had such a way about you that you like to have fun. That at one point in time, she had to actually hit you in the leg, say, hey, I got to get serious right here. We got to focus. I got to focus on the right pitch call. But she said, so would you say, because I know you have fun, and I know you're brutally honest, whether it's to the umpires, the visiting coaches, your teammates, a girl who struck out, who shouldn't have struck out, a girl who, you're just brutally honest. But the fun piece, is the fun piece part of how you compete? Is that your personality? Tell me what you think, because you said the mindset of Sierra Romero. Like, I would think that the mindset could happen because she could walk back in the dugout, and you're not going to blame her. You're going to help shape that. I would believe that you help shape that competitive mindset too.
Well, I'm going to credit her mindset to Mike Romero. Honestly, her father, man. Look at the kids he's turned out, and God bless him. As you know, he just passed away this past month. But Sierra learned to have fun. I mean, we had fun in our dugout. My favorite years and some of my favorite teams, we laughed a lot. I mean, we always had fun, and we'd make fun of each other. I can make fun of people with the best of them, and and yeah, I'd be like, Jen's calling pitches. She walks. I'm like, what the hell? She goes, Hutch, we're just setting up a double play. I'm like, oh, okay, that's an old one. But, I get I'm nervous chatter in the dugout. Sometimes she'd be like, Hutch, shut up. She just tell me, shut up. Bonnie would always sit at the very end of the other side.
Right.
Like, well, she's calling the defense. I go, she can't stand being around Jen and I, because sarcasm A and B, and then Bonnie's like not into that. Right. But yeah, it's probably somewhat of my personality. I like to, take things and look at the humor side of it before I decide to dig in and get serious about it. I remember we were talking about, God, at the convention, and Enquist and her UCLA group were sitting behind us. This is early when Jen hadn't been in our program too long. And, we're talking about how the bats were a problem and people were cheating with bats. And so we're going to have one bat rack. We're going to have one bat. You and I use the same bats. It was something we were proposing and talking about it. None of it made sense. And we look at each other, Enquist and I are like, where are we going to put the bat rack? Where are we going to put the bat rack? Like, this is an important question we need to ask. So you just find the humor in life. But I believe laughter is important, and period. And yeah, sometimes I'm not always laughing. It's funny how many kids who watch this on TV. I'm amazed how many people still recognize me, Tim. I am just blown away by how many people come up in the middle of nowhere and like, oh my God, you're the softball coach. I'm like, wow. But how many people have asked, wow, you seem really mean, but you don't seem that mean in person, but you look mean. So that's me looking at the hitter thinking, what the hell are you doing? Trying to figure out things, but.
Well, have you seen the Instagram? Like they do they do this. It's got like a square, a box of different coaching faces. And the one coach that always said the one face of this guy hitting the fungo, and it's the coach that hit the fungos way too hard. Well, I'm like a meme, and it's the coach who never smiles. Like that's my reputation that everybody has. I always say that coaching third base on national television is nowhere near the personality of the person who's actually in the coaching box. They could be having fun and they're really a mean person. They could be serious, super serious, but they're actually pretty lighthearted and, pretty casual, and they go about it. But I would put you in that category. Like I would say, if you didn't know that you're just a fiery and intense competitor. But again, that's just that camera lens and how that portrait gets painted. I've seen you so different than that. I've seen you, be super kind and, give your kid a pat on the back. I've seen you blow a kid up. I've seen you tell an umpire, hey, good job. And I've seen you tell an umpire, you need to get better. Like, I think you're just, if you ask me who the most real coach that I've ever coached against is you. You're the most real. You're the most honest. You're friendly when it needs to be friendly, but you're the most honest coach. I think that's something that I pay that as a huge compliment to you. That you beat me plenty of times. We've obviously won, but I think the key to always go is that I never won or lost and go, man, I hated that game. It was always a really good game to play you.
Yeah. Well, I'm honored by that. And, I love to jaw at the other dugout. I walk over there and entertain them. Whoever listened to me talk, and I'm a big believer. I don't talk to the other team if there's something, you're not happy with their kid, how the kid slid into my kid, or I don't go there. But you know what? Kids will talk to me and, ask about one kid's like, oh, what's that tattoo on your leg? I said, well, we won a national championship. And I tell them about the tattoo, or I make fun of my kids. I'm like, my kids could hit the ball, righty hitter, and lace it into your dugout and almost hit you. That's literally hitting a ball behind yourself. And I would always look at the dugout and say, we are this is unbelievably talented. Who else could hit the ball behind them? A ball coming directly at you and you can hit it over there.
Yeah.
Right? So you just make fun of it. So I did fun with my kids would be like over it. But
it's funny too, because you get that right-handed power. I always use two phrases. One is I would always joke, wow, if we played on a round field, you'd be an All-American. Because and the other one is I used to say this all the time to when the girl would hit a ball, it was a terrible swing and a terrible pitch, and they'd hit it right off the inside part of their shin. And I'd always tell them, hey, that's just a reminder of how bad that swing really was.
I would say on that, I'd walk up and they're limping and they're moaning. I'd say, this is God's way of punishing you for swinging at that. So never that well received at the time, but then they come back to reunions and laugh about it. So,
we need to keep them on their toes. We need to keep them accountable, but we also need to give them some dinner table talk to where they can make fun of us when we're not listening. So I think that's good.
Yeah,
I'd agree.
I'm sure you the same way. Plenty of fodder for that.
Yeah, plenty of it.
Plenty.
Well, the some of the things that when I was studying you, this is obviously you hear the rumors and the rumors of here's my rumor. Well, that Carol Hutchins, that she was a basketball player and a softball player at Michigan. I'll say it quietly, Michigan State. And I go, no shot. There's no way. This is early in my career. I was like, no way. This is a big blue, a Michigan legend. There's no way. And I'm like, I'll be dang. There you are, a basketball letter winner, and also a national championship shortstop on a softball team at Michigan State, and also so this is crazy to me, and I don't know if you guys have like a timeline for retired coaches, but the fact that you're not in the Michigan Hall of Fame just tells me it's about there's a X amount of years you have to be out of coaching or playing to get into the Hall of Fame, but you're a Michigan State Hall of Famer before you were a Michigan Hall of Famer. And there's no way that you can't even draw that stuff up. So I think that's a pretty incredible feat. Tell me a little bit about your playing experience and how many times has somebody asked you that question?
Well, people for years in this athletic department here at Michigan would be like, the week of the Michigan State football game, who are you rooting for? And I look at them like, really? My paycheck is blue. And I said, I always root for Michigan State to come in second. But, I wanted to go to Michigan State my whole life. I grew up in Lansing. I literally rode my bike to Michigan State's campus. And they had one of the better women's sport programs back in the late 70s. Remember, I graduated from high school in 75. And it was a no-brainer. That's where I wanted to go. But 6 kids, my mom and dad are divorced, and we don't have any money. I lived at home and rode my bike for my first 3 years. When my dad helped me buy a car, and I'm a terrible driver, so I kept wrecking the cars. But I lived at home until I was a senior and finally could afford to move off into campus. And basketball was my first love. I actually wanted to play basketball. And of course, I wanted to play softball. And once I got to college, I'm like, well, I'm a way better softball player, come to find out. But I played in a real competitive women's league when I was 16, and the Lansing Laurels, traveled the country, played against Joan Joyce and Linda Wells and all those greats. And, followed my career ended up being in softball, but I loved basketball. And I was really good in high school, big high school star. And then in college, man, I got my ass kicked because I'm short and I can't jump and I really couldn't handle the ball. But it was a great experience for me. I had 2 different worlds, being kind of like the star. And then I was a role player in basketball. And I learned a lot about how to handle that and get over myself. And I was always felt those experiences were good for me, helped me relate to both kind of kids. And but just we were so happy to get an opportunity to play. I mean, to get to go to college and play sports, and the fact we got $5 a day per diem. We went to the College World Series my first year, 1976, and we'd get on a bus and drive to Omaha and win on Dill Field was a big sport complex like we recruit at. And it rained so much for a couple of days, we played the finals on the UNO football stadium. Oh, our final game, I rounded third and started my slide halfway home. So I slid in like with a wake. There was so much water on that field. And, but we were AIW, so we are not recognized.
Right.
First team east of the Mississippi is Michigan State. I say that many a time. And I like now they came up the Caitlin Clark effect, and they were honoring her breaking like Lynette Woodard's record, who was AIW. It's time for the NCAA. NCAA didn't want anything to do with us. They didn't want anything to do with sport for women. And then they finally took us in. But some of us from back then, that championship meant everything to me, just like Sam Finley's championship meant everything to her. It's no different.
Yeah.
It's time to recognize all the women who came and had any opportunity to play. So there's my advertisement for that.
My professor would tell you that I'm a C+ student, Coach. I won't lie to you. I'm very honest with my, and it's not because I probably couldn't be higher than that. It's just about I played baseball. I like people, and I didn't necessarily want to put all of my emphasis in one thing. So my ironies of all ironies is my thesis, my graduating paper, my last class to graduate from the University of Oklahoma with my history degree was women in sport. And again, I chose that because I thought, for one, I didn't have to probably read all the books to write a passing paper or grade. And I learned so much. And so when you reference the AIAW and you reference Title IX and 72, and you reference just the women's recognition of the NCAA and I believe 82, and you go through all these things, it's like you learn. And I married a former basketball player, and as a male head coach now, but as a baseball male athlete back then, you just tunnel vision. You go through. Well, I met my wife. We dated, married my wife, and you learn like, oh my gosh, my wife goes. She trains, she lifts, she runs, she team builds, she mental trains. She's got to see the trainer. She rehabs, all the things that I was doing, she was doing. And I'm not saying that I never thought that was possible. It was just so it was such a bad mindset to have, because my sister never played sports, my mom didn't play sports, but in the end of the day, it was like, wow. And that was an eye-opening experience for me. And that's really one of the reasons why I basically said that I could coach women, because I had a tremendous amount of respect for what my wife and her teammates were doing. I was like, man, I would love an opportunity to coach women. And when I went to Oklahoma and became an assistant coach, my infatuation with training even went so much further, because every person I trained, that they all just were like, how do I get better? But they focus so much on their weaknesses. I was like, no, you're so good at these things. Let's focus on your strengths. Your strengths way outweigh your weaknesses. And my wife taught me a lot of that stuff. But I just kind of go back to the recognition of women in sport and the AIW. It's not going to be too long. Again, whether it's the Big Ten takes me up on my offer or it's the NCAA, there's going to be an award named after you for the groundbreaking and the walls and the barriers you've broken. And again, even in your own state, you found that it's okay to be a Spartan and then be a Hall of Famer in the Big Blue as well. So that's a tremendous accomplishment.
Well, so the world that we live in still, people, and you're a good example. You're a guy, you're in sport, and women, even when you were in college, were just getting involved. And it's not like people intentionally are like, well, that's just lesser because they're women, they're not as good as us. But it's really not paying any attention outside of our own bubbles and our own worlds. And it's been such a fun year, the last couple of years, because I think Caitlin Clark coming along and just blowing things away, and then, there's haters who are like, oh, who cares? Who cares about women's sports? And I mean, who cares? A lot of people care. Maybe you don't care. And there's some people who don't, but I don't care about some sports. I'm not a big, fan of certain sports. I don't watch them, but I don't begrudge people that are into them. You're into them. You're into them.
Sabrina Ionescu has a basketball shoe. And I'm not going to say it's the first one of its kind, but it's a unisex shoe. In other words, there's a ton of little girls wearing it. There's a ton of boys, and there's a ton of men wearing Sabrina Ionescu's basketball shoe.
Yeah,
and I think that's a cool thing. I mean, it's an unbelievable shoe. But with that being said, why can't you wear a girl's branded shoe? If you like the player and or you like the shoe, and I think that's a kind of a cool thing to do too.
Well, you think of things this way, and you said it in the beginning, and I'm referred to here at Michigan, the winningest coach in Michigan athletics history, and it always has a qualifier, male or female. Now you think about it, which I assume you're probably, if you're not the winningest coach in Florida history, you will be or are. They don't say male or female, and that when Ray Fisher, who was the baseball coach who had the most wins before, we surpassed that, they didn't say male or female. Caitlin Clark, the winningest coach in NCAA history, male or female, it became a big thing. And again, it's just how the world
I wish you could have seen my notes. I don't know that I knew that was coming, but I didn't even write it. I referenced it, and I didn't write it because I read the same thing.
Well, and I just think it's something great to talk about with your audience, and because that is how it's written out there. And I'm introduced all the time, and I'm a big speaking engagement in a couple weeks. It's how I'll be introduced, and I'll talk about it because I love to bring things to light.
Yep.
Because the way I think about things are certainly different than the way our program administrators think about them, the way a lot of people in the world. And I'm open to this is how I learn things. People bring it to light. And you're like, oh, I never thought of it like that. That's all. And
And my wife tells me, she says it all the time. I mean, that's one of the coolest things. My relationship with my wife has been one of the reasons why I've been able to be a successful, quote unquote, successful softball coach and mentor, because I have a relationship with my wife. It's an honest relationship. She'll check me if I need to be checked. Like, listen, she says two things to me that she goes, it's because you're a guy. Like, you're a guy. Like, you gotta. And so I've been a lot more. I'm a girl dad, and I've been a lot more. I paid attention more. I popped my head out of the sand, and I started to listen and pay attention to little things that I could do a better job of bringing things to light, or not, quote unquote, stereotyping things, into that thing. And the other thing she told me about was one of my girls did a fantastic post-game interview, and she said, Tim, she forgot to say "Go Gators." Like, it's just what we have to do. We got to teach. And I'm like, she goes, but her interview and her content was amazing. Like, she just needs that exclamation point at the end. So,
well, and you've been you're in a women's game. I think
say our. I feel like I'm a guest, so it's okay. I promise.
You said that. Ralph Weekly has said that, and you're a tremendous addition to our game. And I look forward to meeting your wife next year at your Hall of Fame dinner, because I don't know if we've had a chance to meet. But I think
Rachel Lawson follows my wife on Twitter. She said that her tweets or her reposts are amazing. So you may want to check out my wife.
That out. I definitely will. But, it is important that how could you possibly be in the game this long and be so successful if you didn't really identify and understand what, the women that you coach. And people always ask me about, what's it like to coach the women? I coach athletes. I coach people, trying to get the best out of them. I'm trying to, how good are you and how good can you become? And that's what we do. But the interesting thing is, women are often held to different standards, because how I coach and my leadership qualities may or may not be like yours, but leadership is technically defined by male qualities: tough, fierce, competitor. And then we view some of the women and women coaches like, we need them. You should be more nurturing. I've had my colleagues tell me they've been told you should be more nurturing. I go, did they tell the guy that? Did they tell the football coach that? No. We are here to push our kids to an edge, and that helps them grow. That's how you grow. They grow on the field, they grow off the field. And those are areas that we're still not quite there yet, but we've come a long way for sure.
I agree. No, I'm glad you referenced it that way. I started when I asked Patty Gasso the questions about coaching softball, because I was a baseball player, played professional baseball, was coaching Division I baseball at the time. And when I chose to come over, when she offered me the job, I asked her some tough questions. Hey, so she wanted me to work with the outfield and work with the hitting. And at the time, I was just gonna dabble a little bit and figure some things out. But those were the two closest skills relatable to to baseball. And I learned a lot. And my naiveness or my naivety, I'd say, that all of my friends would ask me, like, hey, what's it like coaching softball? I'm like, oh man, it's just like baseball, except for the pitcher throws underhand. Huge mistake. What I learned from one of my best players of all time, statistically and all the other things, academic All-American, Kelsey Bruder, was the Honda Award winner. And her brother Cody is actually a Michigan baseball alum and got his degree from Michigan. But she said, no, coach. We got to look good, feel good to play good. I'm like, okay, I can understand. I can relate to that. So to say that coaching baseball and coaching softball are the same, the ball is just different, is completely wrong. But to your point, I've never not been tough. I've never not been strict. I've not coached my athletes any different than I've coached my own boys in their sports and their training. And I think that's actually helped me to keep, that level of professionalism where I'm like, listen, we're going to dive, we're going to slide, we're going to get hit by pitches, we're going to do all those things because we need to. But having a staff, and I think that was probably the best thing, is having a staff that isn't always the same personality, I think does help, sustain, the days, the weeks, the road trips that you guys, I'm sure you had to endure too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I just think we are all trying to get the most out of our people, the best out of our team, and come together and be a teams that can achieve more than they would have. And part of it is just knowing your people, because we all have different personalities, but all the guys that I have ever chatted with about, they coach men and they coach women. To be fair, I've never coached men. I've only coached women.
You'd be great at it. We would run through a wall for you.
Well, I can tell you this, that the guys, I've never had a guy tell me that they coached men and then they start coaching women and they loved it more. And for various reasons, one of my best friends was our volleyball coach for years, Greg Giovinazzi. And God, we had some great times together. He was an Olympic level coach. He coached the Olympics. He played at UCLA volleyball. And we spent a lot of time just commiserating over some of the differences that we encountered. But I think that women want to be great, and they need a little more reassurance, because we focus on what we're not good at. We focus on what we're not good at. And guys are like, they do it well once. They're like, I'm great. And we do it well 9 times. And one time we do it wrong. And we're like, oh my God, I suck. So, it's good to identify some of the gender differences.
That mindset shift right there.
Yeah, but the standards of excellence are standards of excellence. They're not pink or they're not blue.
Yep. I agree. Well, let me transition to some things about Coach Hutch. So could you? I'm gonna ask you one. I don't want to say one tough question, but I'm gonna ask you your first softball memory. You talked about playing competitive women's ball at 16 against some of the best of the games at the time, especially. Your first softball memory. Can you tell me what was basketball being your love? And I get why. I mean, you know what time you're going to play most of the time. It's indoors. I understand why basketball, the competitiveness.
I love the physical grueling of it. I loved conditioning.
Yeah, I could see it. So tell me about your first softball memory and what made you, I guess, fall in love with the game of softball.
There's the Lansing Laurels, who I ended up playing for. They were a big deal in Lansing, Michigan. They played at Randy Park, and they would fill the place. I mean, they were like semi-professional, and they traveled the country. And my dad, and actually my best friend's dad, he was a pitcher in the local, men's league. And so we always went to his games, and we were my friend and I, the 2 girls in the dugout. We'd be the back girls, and man, we loved it. And then he really spent time with me. My friend Joe McKim, her dad, Joe McKim, worked with me some. And then my dad was insistent that Lansing Laurels were having a tryout, and you got to go to that. And I'm thinking, I can't go that. I'm 16 and I was scared shitless. So I went there, and I was determined that I was going to keep up. And there was all these people there, and they're hitting fungos at us, and I wasn't going to miss a ball. And this is back in 1970. I don't know. I had on jeans. We wore jeans and tennis shoes, and I rode my bike to get there. And sure enough, I got selected. I made the farm team, the Lassies. Very competitive. It was like their farm team. And that first summer was the first time I ever played organized sport. Anything that was organized had coaching. We went to games, and we had uniforms. I'd never played in a uniform before, right? Even in high school, we didn't have that stuff. We played in pennies and our gym shorts. And so I fell in love. I mean, the team, being on a team, getting coached, playing, I was good at it. It's easier to love something when you're good at it, I'm sure. But I just fell in love with it. And then after that season, the coach from the Laurels came and said, we're going to move you up. You're going to play on our team. And I had gone to watch them for years. And first of all, I did not think I was good enough to play on their team. And second of all, I didn't want to. I loved my new team. I loved it. I go, I don't want to. He goes, no, that's not how this works.
Oh, wow.
You're on the farm team to move up, and you are good enough to play on this team, and you need to come with us. And I did. I mean, I didn't really think I had a choice. And it was just amazing experience. And I was taken in, I played with Mary Nutter.
Yeah.
Mary was about 10 years older than me. And she kind of took me under her wing, which everybody did, because I was the kid who'd show up and be like, oh, I forgot my cleats. And, oh, what time was I supposed to be here? And I was a disheveled mess. And she was
But
just
you were
like,
only 16. That's okay.
I was 16. Well, I didn't change a whole lot really my whole life. But it set me straight. I was in a period of life. I tell people this occasionally. My parents had just divorced, and I went from being the all-American good student and like a good doobie to goofing off, skipping school. I kind of just I acted out. I was kind of messed up. And thank God for being on that team and playing for Kate Purvis, who was the head coach of that team, and she was a tough woman. And I think it sent me in there. It propelled me into where I ended up in my career, playing on the Lansing Laurels, because I didn't want to screw it up. I started straightening up. I never wanted to lose that opportunity to do what I was doing. And I'm one of the people like sports saved me.
Yeah. I tell my sons this all the time that, my decision to play sport, when I was in high school, I had my best friend went into the Marines, and I could really run. I could train. I was going to go in the Marines. I didn't know what I was going to do after high school. And I knew I didn't want to, my dad had a business. I didn't want to do that. And so I say the same. Sport saved me for different reasons, but
Yeah.
it gave me an identity. It gave me something to look forward to. And it gave me the structure and discipline that I actually wanted that I didn't even know I wanted, which is crazy.
Well, I think that's true of all. Most people don't. I tell people like, oh, wow, you make your kids do all this. I said, they thrive. They are thriving in structure. If they don't have enough structure, they're all over the place.
Yeah.
They thrive in it. And that's what we provide that in athletics. And then, my alums who come back, I'm sure yours are like, you wouldn't believe the world out here, Hutch. These people are so disorganized. They could never play in your program. And, they don't know what they're doing. And I said, I know. You're fortunate. You're well prepared for the world when you leave our world.
Well, and it's why athletes are so successful in businesses, especially businesses that require any type of a team atmosphere. They understand dedication, hard work. You work until you get it done. You don't work until it's time to go. We're finished here today. I think that's one of the key components is just that life discipline that it teaches you about doing an excellent job, not just doing a job. And
you learn of all the things, you learn how to persevere.
Yeah.
And to get it done and to get it done well.
Yeah. Well, it's getting people to work. I think that's one thing that's different. Early in my career, I was probably get people to work for me. And as I got more mature and I got smarter and I got better people around me, it was getting people to work with me and create and set a goal for everybody, not just for Tim Walton or, I know what we're doing. No, it's get everybody's input, get everybody's, hey, how can we do this better? Hey, so-and-so, you're facing Jenny Ritter today. What's your approach? All right. Okay. Well, tell me what you see. Well, I see this. All right. Well, let me help you get to a better spot, but I want to know what you think because you're the hitting, not me. Give them a little direction and stuff. But so my final question, just and originally I started thinking, let's talk about the 5 people that that impacted you. Well, I mean, your list is such a you've got such a laundry list of influential people. I thought this would be pretty impactful, and that would be tell me I want to hear the toughest pitcher or hitter, whether you were playing or whether you were coaching, the toughest pitcher or hitter that you've ever had to face in your career.
I am so fortunate that I got to play against Joan Joyce. I mean, I was a young kid and I'm like, she was a rock star. And honestly, arguably, because we all know how great Lisa Fernandez was in her time, but I'm going to tell you what, the biggest badass on the planet, the toughest competitor I've ever seen. I've had that luxury of playing golf with her and thought, oh my God, I've never seen a competitor like this. But she was unreal. We would play them. They would come to Randy Park and 3,000 people back in the 70s to watch Joan Joyce and her team play everywhere they went. And she was a slingshot pitcher. Don't ask me how hard she threw. All I know is I fouled off a couple balls against her and thought, wow, I touched it. And then how she played on the field, and then she could walk behind the dugout and light up a cigarette. I mean, she was just a badass and a competitor in every sense. the best ever, in my opinion.
Okay, that's good. I didn't know you were going to go at that spot, but it doesn't surprise me at all from all the stories. I knew Joan very, very well, being in the state and even through the recruiting trails and our relationship that we had in the past with Worth Sports and her connection with Worth and Spalding and Dudley and all that stuff. She was amazing. Amazing person and very honest and
very honest, brutally honest,
and kind, but kind too. Like she was kind. Yeah. She's like, and when she told me one time, she goes, "Hey, I got this kid. She's really good. She's a hard worker." But she said, but she's a really good softball player. And I was like, "Oh wow, so she must be really good." If you're saying she's really good, like she is, she was such a special and to be in the Hall of Fame for softball and the number of Hall of Fames, but also to be in the LPGA Hall of Fame as well. I can't even imagine that. It's amazing to be that good at everything.
I just, like I say, what a great competitor. I mean, I admired her, starstruck with her, and I got to play golf with her and drink beer with her. And I miss her terribly. And she was a gift to our game, and she was just a gift to women in sport. Again, one of our all-time icons.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely. Definitely the word trailblazer in fast pitch softball. She would be at the front page of that one for sure. I'm sure. Yeah. That's amazing. Okay. Last question. This is a tough one. This may bring out some memories, but I think this is suiting for you. Tell me, because you're such a fun competitor, what was the toughest memory that you have in the dugout, a toughest dugout moment? Could be a competition, it could be anything you want, but the toughest dugout moment you can ever remember.
Oh man. I think probably, I don't know if it's a single memory, but as a coach, sometimes you're like, man, I did a good job today. You feel good about the calls you made or just how it went. And I walked out there a number of times, like I wasn't my best self. I got too mad at the kids. I mean, when I've blown up with the kids, I've come in a number of times and apologized because I have a temper. I have my dad's temper, and boy, they, so I would say the toughest thing for me is looking back on, well, I sure could have been a lot better a lot of times with my people. Cause I pride myself in being about my people, but sometimes I probably took the toughness to a level that wasn't going to help them be great.
It's crazy how, when we spend time coaching, as long as we coach, we talk about self-evaluation and self-reflection, and you guys need to do a good job going and look yourself in the mirror but the amount of times, I can tell you the exact same thing. Sometimes we win, sometimes you lose. The amount of time I've reflected on just being bad, like, gosh, you were bad prep, bad intel, bad reaction, bad whatever, or I should have fought for my kids more at the whatever. It's refreshing. I will say that, for me being a coach, to hear somebody like you saying the same thing. And I'm sure this will be refreshing to a lot of people that are listening to the podcast that are going, man, I'm glad that that Coach Hutch is human, because I feel the same way a lot. And so I think you're very relatable. But I tell you what, I've made a little bit of taken pride in trying to grow the game the right way, with positivity and some good reflection, some good stories, some good connections. You are truly the best GOAT and the be your own GOAT that I know. And I really appreciate the time that you spent with us and helping young coaches, young people, and past players of yours and mine, and reflect on the time that we've shared. And nobody was better, in my opinion, of competing than Carol Hutchins. And Hutch, just really appreciate everything you've done for the game. And thanks for joining my podcast.
But it's just been fun to chat and to connect with you. And, like I said, I loved our rivalry and our competitiveness, and the fact we could hug each other and I can call you names. And once you figured out my humor, you appreciate it. But
the one name that you called me was very flattering. So thank you for that.
Forever. And that. So I taught it to your staff. I sat by him recently. But you know what? You're growing the game and what you do for the game. And, you're going in our Hall of Fame, and that is a big deal.
Number 99 in the Hall of Fame. I did my history. I did my homework.
Is that
number 99? I remember my first Hall of Fame banquet. Yvette Gerard went in, and
Yeah.
I was very, 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 very proud of her because I had a chance to meet her before. But I'm glad to be any Hall of Fame that has Carol Hutchins in it, and they put me in it. It's an honor to be there 1,000%. So thanks for allowing me to be in your club.
But we're all in the club, and it's a lot of fun. So I'll enjoy that. And I'm watching you this year. You guys are doing great. And
as long as we don't play Michigan in regionals, I think we're gonna be all right.
Well, good for us, but it's good. You're doing a great job, and we're all proud of you. So enjoy it, enjoy the ride, and it's ups and downs. Just stay even.
Thanks, Coach. Well, I really, really appreciate your words and your time and the stories again. But love you very much. You're the best. I appreciate you.
Back at you. You take care. Tell your wife I can't wait to see her.
Absolutely. We'll do it.
Okay.
Have a great day. Thank you for your time.
Bye-bye.